Hello everyone and welcome to a special episode of Cybeers. We're joined today by our first ever guest, the founder of Cybersec People, Ricki Burke. Welcome, mate.
Thank you.
Good to have you here. This all came from a conversation that we had in Las Vegas at Hacker Summer Camp. It's been a little bit of time in the making, but you delivered on your promise to do a video on roller skates, which if people go back and watch, they'll say this one's for Nick Morgan. They'll hear you say that. But that's where that came from. So welcome as being our first guest.
Thank you.
Almost as always, we're joined by Richard Granger, Global Head of Digital Forensics and Incident Response. Welcome.
Hello, yet again.
Again, yeah.
Again.
And Craig Martin, Head of Incident Response. So, welcome.
Thank you.
Also, we've got a pretty special end of November Cybeers that we've got going on. I think it's the Movember special. So, Rich and I have opted to go with the handlebars. Ricki, you've got the most glorious, thickest, just
brilliant.
top lip that I think I've seen for all of Movember.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Was there some special oils or anything that have gone into it?
No, very organic.
Very organic.
Yes.
I love it. And then, Craig, you did warn us at the start of Movember it was going to be pretty thin.
This is also organic, no fertiliser.
No fertiliser.
Is that 2 years now you've been doing that?
Yeah, exactly. I said I'd just keep on going. So,
all right, Ricki, you don't get on the beers these days, so you've got the bubbly water.
Yes.
First time you've had bubbly water, I think.
I do. Thank you, Craig. Very accommodating of you.
Yeah.
Yes. So bubbly, sparkling water.
Yeah. For those of you who don't know, it's not pronounced bubbly. It is bubbly. It's owned and manufactured by Pepsi. So came in to compete with Mount Franklin. Discovered that while I was in Canada. But yeah, you're on the bubblies. Rich, one day I'm going to get you to drink a beer. What have you got
And it's
today?
on water, isn't it?
Yeah, it's straight water.
Coloured water. So this time I'm going with a strawberry gin. So this is from Granary Lane, which is a fairly new distillery in Ballarat. We went there a couple of months ago, and I picked up this bottle and I figured today's a good chance to crack it open. So I got the strawberry gin. It's not bad.
Well, it is coming into December, so I think that's probably going to get smashed. And the weather on Monday is 35 degrees. So,
wow. And then raining on Tuesday.
It is Melbourne.
And 14.
yeah.
11.
Snowy.
What do you got to say, Craig?
Today, so there's two blokes over in South Australia.
Mm-hmm.
No fuss. They just brew beer in a shed.
Wow.
So this is Big Shed Brewing.
Big Shed will make sense. We'll put it in the name.
I've got the mango sour beer. So big on the sours, big on mango.
Sours,
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
All right, give it a crack. Let us know how it goes. And I've gone the Beer Farm Pale Ale. So this one is the New World hopped easy drinking ale. It's made in Metra Cup. Now, those of you who don't know where Metra Cup is, it's from a bit near my hometown of Bunbury in Western Australia. So it's good West Australian beer from lovely place Gale Road in Metra Cup. So cheers and welcome to the first guest Cybeers.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Appreciate it.
Cheers.
This is average.
Average. I'm addicted to them and I've got everyone else
Honest
addicted.
reviews.
Oh, this is lovely. Craig, you got this for me again for this Cybeers, and that's a good choice. That is a very, very nice, just easy pale ale. Bit of flavour, bit of hop to it. Probably wouldn't have it on a hot summer's day. It's a little bit too hoppy, but that is because it's a hopped pale ale. But if you're looking for something that has a bit of body, yeah, that's nice. The Beer Farm Pale. Give it a go. How about yours, Craig?
Does what it says on the tin. Tastes like mango. It's sour. It's beer.
It's probably about 3% as well. So that's
It's not too bad. 4.7. It's not too bad. Pretty hoppy, but not pretty good.
yeah, nice.
Yep.
Rich, and you've already been stuck into the gins. How's
Yeah,
your...
it's good. Normally with a lot of like sort of fruity gins, they're very sweet on the sweeter side, but this one's not. It's delicious. So highly recommend.
Yeah, nice. Definitely a gin connoisseur. So, all right. So we're going to talk today about careers. Obviously, Ricki, you're the founder of Cybersec People, mate. We've done careers pretty recently. We did it, but we thought it'd be a good opportunity to get a bit of an update coming through the end of the year, what you're seeing. We've got our internal perspective, but a bit of a view on what's happening from the outside world. So what are we seeing in the world of cyber? There's the economy's allegedly going into recession. We're seeing companies being a bit conservative. Is that happening in hiring and in cybersecurity?
It's definitely a change. It's been a weird year. I mean, I think we can say that in many respects anyway. So if I look at this year, we've had, and for context, we look at the number of job adverts on Seek specifically at the end of last day of each month.
Mm-hmm.
We look at the numbers. We then manually break those numbers down to understand the trends in the industry. So security operations, GRC, et cetera, So as the overall trend, we can just see a certain number, and then month on month we can see what's happening. This year we've had 2, as far as I'm concerned, all-time highs of job adverts
When
at
were
the end
they?
of each month. Approximately March and let's say August. No,
Really?
July, potentially. July or August.
What do you think drove that?
So you may remember there were a couple of
Incidents. We've talked about them. I think there was 13 actually that were released in the media, so just a couple.
In Australia, we had some big incidents last year. Let's not name names.
We've done it. Go for it.
I mean, we know who they are, but essentially, big incidents last year. And then what was really interesting, and I've got all charts and stuff, and it looks.
You share these reports
Yeah, I do on a monthly basis.
on the website.
Should do.
Yeah. If people watching Cybeers want to get hold of them, how do they get hold of them?
Reach out to me.
Yeah, okay.
I've got months and months of data.
Yeah. Wonderful.
So we've been tracking this since 2020, so we've got lots of interesting data, but essentially, 2 all-time highs, and I think what drove it was those breaches last year. So I think last year we saw globally layoffs and all sorts of stuff, and when we were in Vegas and we were talking to people in the US, obviously Rapid7 did their...
Well, we landed and people from Rapid7 and I can't remember the pen
NTT?
test firm. Oh, yeah, NTT. People landed and their colleagues were being laid off.
Yeah.
Like they didn't even know until they landed. So yeah, we saw that
sucks.
massive round, right?
So talking to people in the US, they had it way worse than we did over here. So in general, I think the Australian economy has been pretty more, not even resilient, it's just been better than the US.
If you think that, do you think maybe that's because they just hire really fast?
They hire fast, fire fast, but then also their interest rates, I know this is a whole deeper conversation here, but interest rates went up way more over there than they did here. We're still behind them. Our inflation is still higher.
Yeah.
So this is not an economic version of Cybeers.
Cybeers post-economy.
Welcome to Economics 101. So, but you've got all this stuff going on. But we never saw the layoffs, and I think we got very lucky in our industry. So we had the breaches last year. We saw the numbers already going down, and then it's around August, September last year they happened. And I think on the back of that, we then saw a spike in leadership roles, first of all.
Okay.
So for me, that's a whole bunch of CEOs and board members, directors. Oh, crap. We don't want to see our share price drop 20%.
But they also don't want to be the ones that are responsible for the breach and have that held against them.
So we did see a spike in leadership roles. So there were a whole bunch of new leadership roles created, which then, if you think about it, when it comes to hiring, you hire senior people who then are going to come with their strategy, their roadmap. They're going to then come up with their plans of what they're going to hire. And then for me, that's where the sort of knock-on effect of 3, 4, 5 months later, we saw new hires come through, and that was the demand early this year.
Right. And did we see Australia's got this very, very weird tendency not to give someone a CISO title? We'll call them IT security manager, or then we've had that whole discussion of who an IT security or cybersecurity person reports to, and in our view, it's chief risk officer, right? Remove it. We've got this really bad tendency to make them report to IT. Have we seen more of that segregation and separation now, not reporting to IT and actually giving a CISO title?
Yes and no, like some, but it depends on the maturity of an organisation, and also it depends on who they're getting advice from. Because there's a whole bunch of companies that don't always know, like they're trying to do the right thing, but it depends on who they're getting advice from of then what they're going to hire. Because if you're hiring something you've never hired before, you're relying on outside advice, and it depends on that outside advice. Then,
Are we seeing reporting lines though changing from IT, or are they still security roles that you're seeing reporting into IT?
honestly, it depends on the company.
Yeah, okay.
But I'm not seeing a massive shift at the moment because the thing is with Australia, it's still a small sample size. We're still in our maturity journey. When we compare ourselves to the US or other markets, we're way behind.
Yeah.
But the encouraging thing is there has been growth. There is maturity happening, and you'll see it with your customers as well in terms of what they want to do.
It's shifted, guys, hasn't it, so much? I say, just as those breaches that shall not be named, just as those breaches shifted, I think we've seen that change now as well in maturity of customers. We talked about it with war games, but we're also seeing it now reach as part of the SOC and just instant response in general. Is that a big shift?
There's more awareness these days.
Yeah.
And as a customer of those companies that got breached last year, I'm not happy about it. But on the whole, it's a good thing for the industry because ultimately it's headline news. And now you've got board members, board directors and founders and all sorts of level of people talking about security. So I think the highs that we saw, knee-jerk reaction to those, and I think that will happen every time there's major breaches, and there'll be a cycle of 2-3 months later, there'll be, more jobs created off the back of that. But that now takes us to reality and where we're at now. And what's really interesting, we've seen 2 big drops in the last 6 months.
Really? So we
Yeah.
saw the peaks in
We've seen
March
peaks,
and July?
and then we saw that roughly it was, let's say, July or August, all-time high in Australia for the numbers.
All time?
Yeah. The month after, we saw about 28% drop in job adverts. So we're only talking
28?
month on month, which is interesting.
What do you know off the top of your head what the increase was from, say, June to August? Do you think it was comparative, so it's gone up?
It was pretty steady growth.
Do you think though it went up 28 and then back down 28, or it went
We've seen it go lower now.
even lower?
Yeah. So we track the numbers. So today we're recording this on the
30th of November.
3rd of November.
Everyone's excited to shave their mow off.
Especially my wife.
No, you've got to grow it out from there. You've got to go the full thing.
So I did the numbers this morning, and we're down 21% from last month to this month. Now, what's interesting is you could say, well, maybe it's seasonal because we're near the end of the year. Well, year on year, November last year to 23, we're now down about 25% from last year.
What?
So we will see a continued drop in December because Australia goes on holiday.
Yeah.
Job adverts don't get renewed. There'll be a spike in January, is my expectations. But
Most companies aren't hiring now. They're parking it until we'll start
late
interviewing January, February. We're not, by the way. We're hiring all the way through.
So the number we saw today is one of the lowest, if not lowest, I've seen this year.
Do you think that's because we had that massive growth? So everyone's done their hiring. So then they're like, oh, roles we were going to hire in October, November, December. Now we've hired earlier.
I think it's more economic reality. Just an opinion.
Yeah.
I'm not an expert.
Yeah.
But I think reality is now catching up.
Okay.
I do feel like, because there's still money around, there's still business is still busy, there's still stuff going on. I do feel like if there was when the next big breach happens, I know we had one recently, DP World, but it didn't seem to quite gather enough attention or criticism as others.
And I think that's because people don't look and go, that's my personal data, right? Even though they've come out, I think it was this morning or yesterday, and said there was no ransomware, things were not impacted, there was no encryption. So systems were not encrypted. There was a hell of a lot of data stolen, but when you think about a port, you don't really think and go, what data have I got with a port?
I think the issue would have been if there was then backups for months on end and stuff's not coming through the country, then there's a real impact.
Yeah.
This was a couple of months ago, and Rich couldn't get his car because it was stuck in the port. I'll tell you what, we would hear all about it.
I think that's all that we heard about. But he's got his car now, and it's a very lovely car. Is there any specific area that we're seeing drop? Is it advisory? Is it pen testing? Is it SecOps?
So we've seen some really interesting trends happen over the last year or so. So you've been in this space a long time and business doing GRC many years. For me, like GRC is the sort of bedrock of the industry because I think the risk, the compliance, the frameworks helps companies drive what they need to do in terms of the technical work that needs to happen. But what's really interesting is those GRC roles, not drying up, but they were number one in terms of demand, like historically for a long time. And then we saw a shift approximately, let's say 12 months ago.
Yep.
And it switched to maybe a bit longer than 12 months ago, but essentially went to engineering. So engineering, really vague term, but application security, cloud security, DevSecOps, SIEM engineering, the builders of the security world. They went into number one in terms of demand. So companies probably want to get more bang for their buck. They actually
want to see something come of it, not just write a strategy that might sit on a shelf.
They're taking action, and they're utilising their tools and doing all sorts of stuff, whether it's application security, whether it's improving their cloud security posture, whatever. Essentially, that was number one for quite a long time. Then we saw security operations, an area very close to you guys' heart, where that's went into number one for last month, which is really interesting. When we look at security operations, again, vague term, from our perspective, and again, it's just my own terminology, it's SOC, incident response, threat hunting, threat intel. That's about it. Those are the main roles. So that was number one. Now, we haven't tallied up the data yet. That's being done today, so we'll have that next week. I wouldn't be surprised if that's now standalone number one. And my expectation is going into next year, I'm judging, again, this is where the small sample size of the stuff that you guys do, or even us internally, the work with our customers, it's a very small sample size. It's not the whole market. That's where having the observation of all these job adverts, breaking them down. So we manually break every job advert down because you can't judge it by a job title.
No.
You look at some people's jobs and you're like, no.
Well, the thing is, you can, like, someone's a security consultant. Okay. So that could be a pen tester. It could be a GRC consultant. Like the skill sets are just like opposites. And so I know they're both assessing, but they're very different. So you want to know what that actually means, and that's where manually we break all this stuff down to understand the trends within the industry. So it's interesting to see essentially GRC coming off, engineering going up, SecOps going up. You guys are super busy. The stuff that keeps us really busy is the security operations as well.
See, that's super interesting because we've had, excuse me, in the last week, we've had 4 or 5 clients come to us and say, right, I need an advisory person now, full time for the next 3 months. And we've gone, oh, okay, sure. We've had other clients come and say, I need an engineer full time for the next 6 months.
Wow.
Whereas we've seen a reduction in companies asking for pen testing. And I think that's because a pen test they've realised has to be part of the arsenal.
Yeah.
But it's a point in time. Why would I want to go and spend the money on doing a pen test when I can spend the money on fixing the things I know are broken through either engineering, SecOps, like you say, or advisory to come in and finally write these policies, and then that drives everything else. So that's really interesting to hear that you've seen advisory dropping, engineering going up, and SecOps like we see, but the advisory side going down.
Also, companies building out teams and the maturity levels, like how many, like internal, how many GRC advisory people would they actually need? Whereas a SOC, you're going to have all these different layers of people and different skill sets. So,
well, typically companies can need one security manager, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's probably why we saw the spike as well, because everyone went, well, I need a security manager. I need it. And we noticed that the advisory consultant pipeline just dried up as all of those companies went and said, well, we need a security manager. Now they've hired that security manager. That's probably why we saw the spike, that we're now seeing it taper off. Because like you say, Now they're saying, well, I need an engineer,
Yeah.
or I need the actual doer.
The companies are trying to embed security and have security by design. So essentially, they're trying to be more proactive and front load security, is my opinion. And that's where, interestingly, talk about two very different areas where we're seeing pen testing. It's not going down, but it's definitely it's like moving sideways.
Plateaued a little bit.
Yeah.
Very much so.
Mm.
And that's always the case for pen testing. Now, what we also have to bear in mind is this is what we see on Seek. This is not everything, because we know that there's a whole bunch of jobs that never appear online.
Yeah.
So
Well, we don't advertise on Seek.
yeah,
We don't go online. We've worked with you for 5 odd years. Rich was a referrer from you guys. I think the words were, "You are going to hire this guy."
persuasive.
Yeah, and then our SecOps manager came in to me afterwards and goes, "You've now got the second best beard at TL." I'm like, "I never even had the best one." So, but yeah, we've worked with you, but none of our jobs will ever hit Seek because the level of quality for our highly skilled roles just is not there. Hiring off Seek for security people, I just don't believe it works. I really don't.
It's, in honesty, we advertise, but it's more marketing than anything else.
It's pretty cheap marketing as well at the end of the day.
Yeah, you get
$695 odd bucks.
you
for
get
an ad.
thousands of views, but in terms of the hires that we make, often they come through referrals.
Yeah.
Like we built a red team for a telco recently, and of the hires, I manually headhunting, searching for people. Like that's having a short list of not even people I've spoken to, but just going on LinkedIn. I know what I'm looking for, and I'm going right. That's the one.
Yeah.
And then pass it on to my colleague to reach out to that person. Then just so happens he got the job, and then other people reached out to me because trust and relationships. Like people will see the job adverts, but they'll still come to us, and they'd rather get the insight from us and get a essentially.
Is this company good to work with? You know, give me the inside track, give me the word.
Yeah.
Are you finding people when you're sending emails on LinkedIn? There was a period there everyone was just like, I'm getting 5 LinkedIn emails per day. Are people still
I don't
getting
send
that?
emails.
Okay.
I hate them.
Yeah.
Some
Well,
of my colleagues.
the best ones are the one where it's the wrong name. They'll send you a job.
Copy paste.
Oh, hi, John. And you're like, oh, come on. If you're going to spam me, at least put a little bit of effort
At
in.
least try.
Yeah, come on.
Some of my colleagues do, but we're very particular about how we do it. Personally, I've got a pretty decent network now, so I'd rather just send like messages, direct messages to people,
Okay.
and see if they want to chat. But recruiters have really, and salespeople in general, have really ruined emails. I think.
Recruiters are salespeople at the end of the day. I've said that for a long time. What about you guys? Are you still getting slammed with emails? Or not as much?
I've seen a bit of a shift personally, moving away from local to we're setting up a global
Really?
incident response, or we're setting up a global team and we're looking to establish a
Well, been there,
presence.
done that.
Yeah. So there's been a bit of a shift in that.
Yeah,
It's
right,
less
okay.
local and more cold calling, international almost.
And when do you reckon that dropped off? Was it around the same time that Ricky's saying that the job ads have reduced, do you think?
Like, I suppose hearing what Ricki said, it definitely would translate. Like, there's definitely been some similarities in that timeline. I don't know about you, Rich.
Instant response and digital forensics is the new kid on the block.
It's
So
pretty constant. I think now that you mention it though, Craig, like I think global is something that's a key word that's coming up in a lot of it. Like a lot of organisations are setting up a presence in Australia because follow the sun is a really good thing. That's what we do in DFA.
We're a great place for it. So if you're an American or UK business, we're like Five Eyes and obviously again, what you guys do. Australia's a great place for one of those countries to set some stuff up. So we've helped some international businesses hire in Australia as well, like their first hire or build out a team in Australia. And those companies, they're not advertising on the local job boards because they don't know it or they're not doing it anyway. So
that's interesting because we've tried that, right? We've tried to go to job boards in US and the UK. We don't know which ones to go for. So like the internationals aren't going to know either.
Correct. So going off topic, I was talking about the
It's
trends.
Cybeers, we go off topic a lot.
Well,
There's a topic.
I think
Easy topic to go off topic.
so we touched on pen testing plateauing, but we've seen a growth in security awareness, and
Okay.
it feels like it's been a long time coming.
Yeah.
Telling users not to click the email is not going to make them stop. The threat actors need to be successful once. We need to be successful 100% of the time, which we're never going to be. I have a big problem
Interesting.
with
Okay.
security awareness being at the top of a strategy. When we're interviewing, my question is always, I'm giving away my interview questions. You know,
One by one. Someone's
Take
going
notes.
to
Yeah.
compile all of this. You're like,
You
these
put
are
it
the
onto
questions
some
he asked.
website. These are the TL interview questions if you're ever talking to Nick. But I always ask, what are the 3 important things you're seeing or you believe for cybersecurity in the next 12 months? You would not believe the amount of people that say security awareness. And if you say security awareness is the top 3, you drop to the bottom of the pile.
I know
in
the
my
other,
opinion.
one of the other ones be certifications.
Yeah, I love a good certification because it shows that you're committed to the industry, right? This is an industry I love. I've got a lot of respect for. I've got a lot of time for. Yes, okay, you could have been doing it for 10 years, right? Go and sit the damn cert then. It's if you've got the knowledge and you feel you could walk in and pass it.
I was being sarcastic, so you're serious.
Oh, I am absolutely. I love certifications.
Okay.
It proves your willingness to sit down.
But
and
which
commit
ones
to
are?
it. Look, it depends, right? Pen testing, Crest. I've always been a Crest advocate. Sat on the board for 3 years. Did a lot of support for Crest. Big fan, always have been. From an advisory perspective, ISO 27001, lead auditor, lead implementer,
Guess-
CISM, CISO.
Ultimately, those things are going to help a business sell work and
100%.
deliver work.
100%. You put the profile for your people. I said we've been asked for advisory people. The client wants the profile. If I put someone that's got 27K, PCI DSS, CISSP and a CISM, and I want to charge them 1,900 to 2,100 an hour, a day,
An
and I
hour?
wouldn't-
Happy days.
if I do that, they're going to sell versus the person that, oh, you might have been doing it for 20 years, but have you done a cert? So I'm a big advocate. SecOps, CISA, and Blue Team Labs 1, CYSA. All of our level 1 analysts do their CYSA plus and their BTL 1 within 4 months.
So I know you guys are big advocates for the blue team ones.
Love it.
Yeah.
How did that come around?
Actually, pretty funny. We were looking for, I think you were just involved, or maybe it was when we were hiring you. I was looking for a security range, something that we could give to people, because what we discovered with security operations analysts, they'd have a degree, they'd know what how many IPs are in a /32. One of our absolute screening questions for security operations analysts. How many IPs are in a /32? You need to know
Another
basics
interview
of
question.
it, right? Another interview question.
Add it to the list.
Yeah, oh, that one's already out online. I found that for our security operations questions. They're all online now. Absolutely hilarious.
There's a website for it.
There actually is a website where there's company interview questions.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, I'll find it and I'll send it to her. But we were looking for a way to test people and to say, okay, what's the level of knowledge you've got? We looked at a number of them and they were all like $5,000 per assessment, etc., etc. Stumbled across this one. The guy who used to be a security analyst at Asda had just built it, and then he's like, oh, here's a thing. It was $99 per user for 12 months, had all of these ranges in there, all these challenges for 3 hours. I think it was 3 hours, 2 hours, 3 hours.
Yeah, like you can extend it as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
3 questions or 13 questions to answer, hosted locally, and we went, wow, this looks absolutely phenomenal, exactly what you need. And we found out it had certifications off the back of it as well.
Oh, right.
Now they are growing, when you're talking security awareness, at a rate of knots. They've got red teaming in there now. They've obviously got all the blue team stuff, digital forensics, incident response. If you're in the industry and not using it for your actual practical stuff, you're missing out, and it's not expensive.
I think that was actually part of my hiring was
Yep.
had to do a challenge on there.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
Everyone does to get into our technical team or to the SecOps team and to digital forensics.
Yeah.
You need to do that challenge. What we're struggling with, and I don't know what you're seeing, is that same level of challenge for advisory. Because you can sound like you're really good, but
It's hard. Like, yeah. I mean, you can give someone a case study, but it's
ask them to write an executive summary off a case study.
I think it's easy when it's not easier, but to test someone technically is easier to validate.
It is, because the answer's the answer.
Yeah.
Whereas someone who's reading an advisory piece of work, it's super subjective. Me, if you've missed one comma. I did a report review for digital forensics this morning, and I think I sent it back being like, this report's one of the worst I've ever seen. It's really not. It's really, really good. But I'm so picky on it. Whereas if you provided that to 95% of other people, then it's going to be okay. That's purely because my lecturer, Trish Williams, I'll never forget, at uni, communicating in an IT environment, she just drove it into us that was important. And I think we've lost that a little bit. We've gone super technical rather than focusing on the soft skills.
Well, the thing is, it doesn't matter what job you're in. But ultimately, people in security are there to influence other people make change. Like you may want to do things you want to do, but you're not the one doing it in terms of you've got to influence someone to physically make those changes. So the pen tester pen test is only as good as the report that's written.
100%.
And the same for a GRC assessment or an AppSec engineer, because they're going to be influencing the engineers to then make changes in their environments, or the CISO or CISO in Australia.
Thank you for finally coming around to saying CISO. The CISO thing for years has killed me.
I'm still saying CISO.
I know. Sounds like CCs.
They're good.
Doritos are better.
Ooh, that's a topic.
Contentious
That's a
topic.
poll. But ultimately, you want to influence change, and the communication aspect is massive. So it doesn't matter, for me, it doesn't matter what role you're in, your ability to communicate is everything. So
pen testing's 50% report writing, right? You've got to be able to communicate what you found.
So what if you're the best hacker in the world, but your report's garbage, and you're not, the users are then not making the changes, the engineers, whoever's then making those patches or improvements, if they're not making the changes, then it's worth nothing.
This gets you frustrated, Rich, doesn't it? Like you're always saying, reading your reports, tell me the story.
Yeah.
Like what you're saying, give me actually what happened.
A lot of, you do need to tailor things for different audiences. So, we'll deal with a variety of technical levels during our incident response. We might be talking to technical people half the time, and then we're talking to executives or people from the board who computer's not working. What's wrong with computer? Because they're not worried about that. They've got other things to do.
It's not just board members that do that. Come on, let's not pick on board members.
Yeah, but and it's fair. They don't need to know every little tiny technical detail.
100%.
But
And they shouldn't know.
Need,
if your CFO knows what's running in your cybersecurity strategy, it's the wrong CFO.
Yeah.
You want them to know your balance sheet and your profit and loss
Exactly.
at the back of the hand.
So you need to be able to tailor what you found and, make it understandable for who you're trying to make it to. And the best way to do that is, like you say, telling a story. This is what happened. This is how it happened. This is how we can stop it from happening again.
Well, Craig, you're not from the cyber industry.
No.
You're from an incident response background.
Yeah.
How have you seen that shift coming into cyber? What's the most important thing for a career? Incident response, right? Digital forensics is massive at the moment. But what we've spoken to a lot of the partners we work with about is now we need the person who's got the technical knowledge who can also do incident response. DF's great. We want DFIR. It's that's got on a stick, as some people would say, or IR. So what are you seeing as that shift coming in? If you're looking to get into IR, what are the most important things?
Look, definitely that ability to understand and communicate the intent of the finding. It's not about the finding. If it was about the finding, you wouldn't need a pen tester, because somebody would have already acted on the vulnerability report or the vulnerability that got published, and it would have been addressed. They don't need to be told again that there's a vulnerability. They need to know why is it important, and a little bit of, it's not mayo, but just stick with me. If this was to happen, and then this was to happen, They go through your defense in depth, and they go past and bypass. And Murphy's Law, I actually use it today in a war game. If something can go wrong, it will. So what happens if this and this control fails? All of a sudden, somebody's got a domain admin into your environment. And that means somebody's got the keys of the kingdom, and they can do whatever you want.
So it's back to what Ricky's saying, soft skills. So we're seeing soft skills now more important than technical skills?
At least as important.
Ooh, big shift. Used to be technical was more important than soft skills. Now we're finally seeing the value of soft skills, right? And that's a big shift for our industry. I think we're going to see it more and more because the board member will stop past the CISO, IT security manager, whatever the role is. They will stop past your desk and they will sit and go, all right, John, how are things going? Like, give me a view of our risk profile right now. And if you can, if you sit there and go, duh, the firewall's doing a firewall, right? The board member's going to go, I've lost complete trust in that person.
Yeah.
Whereas if you turn and go, based on our key risk indicators, we've got a vulnerability sitting over here that needs to be patched. It's been sitting there for 17 days. We can't do it right now because it's supporting a critical system. It's planned for the weekend. Yes, it's fine. Do we need to spend some more money on cyber? Yes. Do we need an additional resource or someone to come in to test things? Yes. That'd be wonderful. Board member's going to go, great, I will go and talk to the rest of the board about that vulnerability and getting some more resources. So that is starting to happen.
So I had coffee this morning with a CISO.
Thank you.
Just for our local audience.
Yeah.
Well, it is. I don't know. We've got internationals that watch Cybeers.
Why not?
Oh, absolutely.
It's an international subject.
Cyber's a global topic.
Or maybe they're just a big fan of Australian beers.
Well,
gin.
I have
Or gin.
just.
Or
That's a
gin.
very good segue. I have just, for the first time on Cybeers, cracked my second beer. It's been one of those weeks. I'm now onto the Holgate Mount Macedon Pale Ale. For those of you who aren't aware, Holgate Brewery is out in Macedon. It is a phenomenal brewery. My favourite from out there is the chocolate stout for next time. Thank you for also shouting me this one, Craig, because I ran out of time. But yeah, this is absolutely a clean, lovely pale ale. Try the Holgate Mount Macedon. Support local breweries. Support local business. Don't support Coles and Woolworths. Anyway.
Great plug.
Yes, you had coffee this morning with a CISO.
And he was saying, so he's been there, let's say 3-4 years at the organisation. He came in as hire number 4. And
Oh, wow. In the security team or overall?
Yeah, into the security team.
Okay. The CISO was hire number 4.
Yeah. That wasn't his title at the time. It's evolved.
Okay.
But that's his level now. And the team's now 30-odd people. It's going to be 40-odd next year.
Wow.
So he's got sort of, say, 15
How long has that grown? How long does it take to grow to
in
30?
3-4 years.
Wow.
Let's call it 4 years.
And the company's obviously grown considerably with...
It's a big organisation.
Okay.
Very mature, big organisation. It's just one of those typical ones of we're going to grow security and...
Have they had a CISO before or a security leader?
No.
Right, so they've realised the need for the security leader and promoted from internally.
Well, he's joined and then he's...
Yeah,
Yeah, correct.
but he's come in not at that CISO level and then worked his way up.
I mean, it was a very senior title, but it just wasn't that CISO title.
Where does he report, do you know? IT or risk?
Question. I don't know.
Plug for the next coffee.
Yeah. What he was saying, again, in terms of communication, is that he couldn't just come in and go, I need to do this, this, and this, because you need to take people on a journey and also demonstrate trust, accountability, responsibility, and they're doing the right things. So it's taking him a while, but so next year they're going to grow by 1/3 their headcount, which is pretty impressive. And he's got to the point where he's got essentially those big decision makers, not just because of the type of organisation it's in, 'cause it's in education, so there isn't like a CEO and stuff like that, but essentially the
board.
Yeah, those people, they're asking the right security questions. They want to know. You've got the senior people dropping by and they're asking questions. And I think more than ever, and it goes back to last year of obviously headlines.
Yeah.
The board, the CEOs, the founders, the directors, people don't want to suddenly be surprised or be on the end of their share price dropping or be in the headlines.
No.
So I think like today more than ever, you've got, not everywhere, of course, but I think there's a lot more organisations and senior people out there that are aware. So ultimately, the better you can communicate the story, but still not technical, but still keeping it relevant and relatable, then you can have those conversations and get stuff done and ultimately influence that journey of where you want to get the organisation to.
100%. And we've seen a shift in our board reporting that we do for clients. So it used to be super technical, super detailed. You've got 473 vulnerabilities of critical vulnerabilities.
The list of stuff.
Correct. It was just a list, and customers wanted that. We changed it. And
Customers wanted that.
Customers wanted that.
Okay.
Right, and they would be their key risk indicators. We'd give them a fish and chip shop menu of, you can have all of this. You let us know what you want. And they'd always go for the super technical things. I mean, okay. But then we've changed recently to say, okay, take vulnerabilities, for instance. It's a prime example. Is it internet facing? Yes or no? Does it have PII? Can you get lateral movement? Actually building out vulnerability management programs to say, well, if it's not internet facing, it's segregated, it doesn't have PII, that can wait versus my Citrix NetScaler,
Yes.
which has a 9.8 out of 10 vulnerability on it.
Another one.
That needs to be done.
You got bigger priorities.
Yeah.
And this is actually reflected, and I'm not going to the can of worms that is the cybersecurity strategy. I have avoided talking about the cybersecurity strategy on social media. I'm going to avoid it here for various reasons. But it says that in it now that it's no longer waiting, I believe it says, until it's confirmed that it's a critical vulnerability. It's as soon as the vendor releases it and says it is a critical vulnerability, patch within 72 hours. And so we're looking at these things to say, okay, have you got a vulnerability that should have been patched on your board within 72 hours? And that's where the boards are starting to respond and actually starting to realise these things. Not just, you've got 473 critical vulnerabilities.
Well, not every vulnerability is equal.
Is it critical? Not every critical is a critical. And they're starting to understand this. So again, it comes back to that ability to communicate, not just run a tool and say, splat, here's the results. Being able to actually present it and analyse. So how do people do that, Ricki? Solve it for us. Solve the problem we've got that we went out and told everyone to go and get these super technical master's degrees, and now us four are sitting here going, oh, actually, how do we fix it?
But who did? Who did say do those things?
Well, the government went out and said get a security degree. And then the education providers made it super technical. Is it a whole industry problem then?
But the issue is, no one's hiring at that level. And again, I know the data set we will look at is one data set, and there's obviously stuff outside of that, but it's this helpful, consistent data set that we review every month. There are no entry-level jobs. Not zero, but not far off. We're talking, on average, 4 a month. At the end of each month, there are 4 across the whole of Australia, graduate or entry-level jobs advertised on Seek.
Does this again come back to them not hitting Seek? Because employers are out at job fairs, they're at the universities, they're at...
It's hard. I don't operate in that world. Like, the reality is, if a company comes to us and says, look, we want to hire... A really good example, talking to an MSSP at the moment, really decent firm. They do hire junior people themselves. It's got to the point where it's not sustainable for the founders of the business to do it themselves. Essentially, they want us to be in your world, triage. We're going to triage the initial applications, 200 or whatever it is, and we can do
300 for level 1 security analyst.
And the thing is, good people will be lost through that.
Yeah.
And this is the thing where job adverts, that there's pros and cons to everything in life, and including job adverts. Good people will be missed out. And the thing is that initial triage. It depends on who's doing that, because if you've got internal HR or talent acquisition that don't always know what they're looking for, and it's not their fault, because if they're not a specialist in a certain area, they don't have the knowledge, then they're just maybe going by job title. And as we know, job titles are just...
made up words.
Yeah, they don't help. It's more about the underlying skill sets, but also the person, the attitude, their motivation, their curiosity, the stuff they do in their spare time.
this is why we ask questions in our applications. We ask you 5 questions. One of them we spoke about just recently, and the rest of them are online. So we ask that. We ask, I'm going to go into it. We ask, do you have a home lab? Right, that's going to demonstrate to us.
Do you have a full server rack in your garage?
Richard, do you have a full server rack in your garage? It's going to demonstrate to us, do you take this seriously? Do you actually want to be in the industry? How many IPs in a /32, right? It's basic subnetting. It's something every IT person should know. I've got on plenty of rants that advisory people should have a technical background because you should be able to know what you are referring clients to and what you're recommending them. What's your favourite sandbox? One of our absolute favourite questions. The amount of times we've gotten the reply of GTA 5.
Great game, but not
It's not
what we're
talking
asking for
about.
on this one.
But that's how we do our screening for our roles that are such high applicants. And then we screen from there because it gives us that insight into people. Yeah. But then again, circling back to what we've discussed already, the way you write. We want you to go into depth. Do you have a home lab? It's not just, yes, I do. And it's this box and it's this and this virtual machine.
But we're now getting into a whole minefield of stuff where people are now using GPT to write their cover letters or their CVs. And I've seen some videos of people like educating people how to do it. The thing is, you end up with a whole bunch of people with the same, basically with either the same CVs or with CVs that simply reflect the job advert that's being advertised, which is just bullshit.
Yep.
Like, when you're hiring someone, and again, this is just my opinion, but you want to know what outcomes has that person been involved in? What influence have they had? What difference have they made in an organisation? Because you could have the same job in 3 companies, but the experiences in those companies are what define what you bring to the table.
100%.
And GPT doesn't know that.
One of our hiring managers actually had a feeling a cover letter was written by ChatGPT. He actually popped it in and went, hey, GPT, did you write this cover letter? Yes.
Wow, there you go.
Are you serious?
100%. Yeah, it actually knows what it wrote.
Wow.
So, yeah, don't use ChatGPT for your job application.
I'll give away one of my recruiting hiring
you're recruiting
questions.
right
Here
now
you
as
go.
well.
Hot,
So here we
hot
go.
tips.
But this isn't something that I'm using currently. It's just in the back pocket.
Oh, we're using all of the ones
Yeah.
I'll reveal currently. So go for it. Get 2 beers into Nick and he'll spill all the secrets.
What everyone's saying here is just the volume is high
Yeah.
and the differentiation is pretty low. I love asking people, 5 people line up against the wall, witness lineup. What makes you unique from the other people that are lined up next to you?
Yeah.
Like, what's your point of differentiation, right?
I love that one.
Yeah.
My ending interview question, I've shared this one with you. My ending, you could have aced the interview. And if you're applying for a role that's reporting to me, I will ask you if there is myself, the chief operations officer, and the head of pen testing standing at a party, and we're all standing in different corners of the room by ourselves, a tea or Christmas party, we're each standing there available. Who would you come and talk to? What would your answer be?
I'll stay in the middle and wait and see who comes to talk to me.
Yeah, but that's you. You're a bit weird like that.
Magnetic personality.
Just go get another drink and just see what happens.
Ricky, what would you advise on
No.
in that situation?
It's pen testing, right?
No.
They've got the best stories. Always.
Depends what you're looking to get out of the conversation. I'd say chief operating officer, maybe.
100% every time. Don't cut. Well, not every time. It depends. But if it's reporting to me, don't say you'll come and talk to me, because you're going to be working with me every day, day in, day out. Go and learn from the other people. I'm not in pen testing. Go and talk to the head of pen testing and ask them about their role and what they do and get some insights. Go and talk to the COO, get some insights there.
Understand what's going on in the business.
Correct. Don't just get into the little silo of your team, because you'll fit more into the culture, and we're massive on culture. You'll fit more in if you're not just sitting in that little silo talking to the people you work with on a day-to-day basis. Guys, this is probably going to be one of the longest Cybeers that we've done. Conversation's been absolutely wonderful. It's fantastic having you on, Ricky.
Thanks for having me.
Do you have any final insights that you can share with us? Anything that's in the back of your brain you just really want to talk
So
about?
I'll touch on that last thing you mentioned. There's advertised, there's hardly any entry level roles. It doesn't mean they're not out there. I touch on this a lot. I know other people do as well. But you've spoken about the things that help you stand out. The networking side of things, like the physical, the people, human networking side of things, is just immense in your career. So whether you're junior, whether you're senior, the ability to just, your relationships can drive where you go. When you're junior, get yourself out there. That'll lead on to a second point, but essentially the networking, the meetups, the conferences, volunteer for stuff, put yourself out there, just get to know people. You never know where those things take you. And this is a whole minefield of conversation. This could go on for another half an hour, the comment I'm going to make. Doesn't have to, of course, and I hope it doesn't. But
I've got places to be.
No, I'm busting to go loo. The bubbly's really working.
Bubbly's gone straight through.
We've gotten into a point of, I know you guys are a remote business, but you've got the SOC in Melbourne, you've got a brand new office that you'll be moving into, which people are working out of. We've got into this spot, particularly in Melbourne, but Australia, wherever, like remote working has become a big thing. If you're early in your career, if you want to make an impact, don't work remote. Go and work in an office with people, because if you compare two people side by side, you've got the person working remote and then someone who's in the office 4 or 5 days a week. They're surrounded by their colleagues. They're in the SOC, listening to Rich, listening to yourself. Like, you'll be a sponge. You'll learn from other people. You will build business relationships. You'll understand what's going on. If you're working in a big organisation, a big enterprise company, you can go and talk to other people in the business, the users, like you said, the culture. Learn from those people. You might end up having, conversations with the CEO, with the founders, with all sorts of amazing people. Don't choose a job for convenience. And this is the thing I see a lot of people want remote working, and some people need it. Like, if you're maybe a disability or a neurodivergent, maybe you need that, and that's perfectly acceptable. But if you're at the point where you're just choosing it for convenience, I think you're holding yourself back in terms of your career opportunities. So
I think that is the best piece of advice we have ever given on Cybeers. And I want to stand up and applaud you right now, because it's taken a long time for someone to actually get up in public and say that. I know for a long time you were a big advocate for work from home, work from home, remote. You go back and look at your posts from 2 years ago, and it's, if you're not providing remote work and work from home, then you're losing out on the best candidates.
But it's true.
But now you're understanding of the culture and the way people work together.
And you talk about culture, and that thing is, that's a really important thing for a business. And like flipping it to the business side of things, when you don't have a culture, like let's say you're a remote business, and I know there's some remote businesses out there like GitLab, and they have their whole handbook, and people love working there and stuff like that. And I know friends that work there and they enjoy what they do, but I don't know how much of a, just my honest opinion, how much of a real culture you can have, how connected you really feel to a business if it's pure remote. Like you guys we spoke about the Christmas stuff you got coming up. You got everyone coming over from UK, from other places.
Canada, New Zealand, everyone's coming into Melbourne.
And it's awesome that you're doing that. And the thing is, it's that physical thing of like, I know you can have good relationships, and I've had it with people remote, but there's also something about this, about being around, going out for a coffee, for a beer, for I don't drink. A kombucha. Not a bubbly. Not a bubbly. No, don't invite me for a bubbly. But there's the human aspect, and if you feel part of something, then I feel you're more connected to that business. If you're not connected to a business, you're not connected to a culture, it's more of a transaction. And I think people are a lot more likely to leave a company because they're not connected to the business, the culture.
They'll go for 10 grand and a title. Like, I really am surprised that you've come around.
I've done a 180.
That you absolutely have. You've done a complete 180. But I think the world has, right? And that's why there's this whole thing of, well, remote working worked during COVID. Why can't we do it now? It's because we saw it. We've done it. We've looked and gone, great, we had to do it for convenience because we had to. But here's the things we're not getting. And yes, okay, that's coming from CEO, founder, like two of us sitting across from each other.
I try to say this subjectively because like what you do, what other people do ultimately doesn't impact me directly. And we're going to work with companies regardless of, when we've hired you guys, and we've hired in other countries, we've hired remote, we've hired people in Australia remote, and other companies too, or whether it's on site, we're going to find the people regardless. So it doesn't really matter. But it's just more trying to give some insight. I know some people are going to hate what I've just said because I've mentioned it on LinkedIn recently, and I've been crucified by one or two people.
Yeah, but maturity is being able to realise that your opinion can change.
The issue is, you've got some people that have chosen to live a long way away because they remote job. And the issue is a company then changes their policy. Like I know a guy that worked for a big bank.
Yep, ANZ have now said you have to be in the office.
And so he was working remotely for the company, and then 3 months in told you've got to come into an office. And it's like, one, I didn't sign up for that. Two, his team don't operate in the same office. They're distributed across Australia. So he has to go into an office.
Just to be on Teams meetings anyway.
Yeah.
Which then,
that one doesn't make sense. But if it's the team you're working with, the same people in the same office, and you can go and have lunch together, and you can get to know each other, you're going to respond better to someone coming and asking you for a hand with someone you've had lunch with and you've sat side by side in the trenches with, than someone who you just see on Teams for 10 minutes a day. It's just human nature. It is what it is.
So remote has its benefits, there's no doubt, and there'll be some people that will never go back to in-person stuff. And there's some senior friends that I've got that I know don't want it. They'll just continue remote, and they'll only look for remote gigs. But the thing
in
is,
the industry, if you're a pen tester, for instance, and you're just testing, and the job comes through your queue, and you test and you report, okay, not necessarily important. SecOps in a SOC, you need to share the information that you're learning, the alarms and things that you're seeing every minute of every day.
So more of a collaborative role.
It is super collaborative. Same with digital forensics.
I mean, especially with like when we're talking about entry level, like you mentioned Sponge. Like when I started in DF, like that was in office. Obviously, this was well before COVID. But like just learning from the seniors, invaluable. Like there's no way that it would have worked remote.
How many people in Australia have responded to 100 ransomware attacks? If you can sit around multiple people that can put their hands up and say, yeah, we've responded to Conti, to Lockbit, to Black Cat, to all of this, and we'll happily share with you all of that knowledge. That's invaluable.
Versus the person sitting at home on their own.
100% just reading about this stuff. Craig, I'm conscious of time. We could apparently do a part 3 of careers. Any invaluable insights from you after this conversation?
No, I think I said it before. It's just figure out what makes you unique, and then figure out how to communicate it.
Love that. Rich, any final words of wisdom?
I don't know if I did this in my last careers one, but Blue Team Labs online, again, really, really good opportunity to learn different tools, techniques, and
there's a leaderboard.
You can talk, there is a leaderboard, and you can, talk about what you've identified. Other one, Home Lab.
100%.
Really easy to set up, old laptop, doesn't need to be expensive. You don't need a full server rack to achieve what you
Don't
need.
break into Rich's garage.
Just spin up a couple of VMs, have a play, figure out how stuff works. It's really good to be able to then go, especially if you're interviewing and going through that process, be like, I set up a Windows box and I tested this and then I analyzed it and this is what I found.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Craig, Rich, thank you for being here. And Ricki, first ever guest. It's been absolutely wonderful. You've brought some fantastic insights, and thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
Thank you for joining us. Hope you learned something, and cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers.